All right, everybody, welcome to the stream. My name is Ryan, and this is As It Is Written. Thank you for joining me today. We are going to watch an interesting video from Mikhaila Peterson, who is Jordan Peterson's daughter, and she will be she will be interviewing the gentleman who runs What Do You Meme? I think his name is John McCray. We will see shortly as he is introduced. So, thank you for joining me, and I hope that you enjoy this show.
John McCray, welcome to my podcast.
Yo, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay, so this has been a long time coming. We spoke first. What was it? It was, okay, you would remember. We were on a podcast together. Was it Justin Brearley?
Justin Briley, yeah.
Brierley, okay.
Yeah.
And that's, and I've wanted to talk to you kind of since then, mostly because, so I'm fairly new about, I guess, within Christianity and my beliefs. And so I've been interviewing a couple people, one person, Jonathan Pajot, who he was Christian Orthodox, which isn't, I think, the direction I'm going in, but that was very interesting. But I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. So I think before we get started, can you give a brief background about what it is you do and who you are?
Yeah, no, my name is John McCray, and I run the YouTube channel called What Do You Meme? There's not too much that's that interesting about me, I don't think, but basically I just like to, I like to just like look at culture and look at Christianity and try to communicate the gospel to culture in a way that they can understand and try to kind of make it clear and concise, so that's really kind of my focus. I mean, I've studied a lot of, like apologetics and philosophy, and I'm sure we'll get into some of that a little bit later, but yeah, so that's about it.
So what made you decide to go down that path? I mean, becoming a large YouTuber by teaching people about Christianity isn't exactly the way to become a large YouTuber.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good question. So it kind of happened accidentally, and I'm not sure how far back we want to go, but long story short, I lost my hearing randomly in like my mid-20s. So I randomly just kind of lost my hearing, went deaf. In both years, I had 10% hearing left in this year and 15% hearing left in this year. And the doctors didn't know what happened, what caused it, whatnot. And so my hearing started going down. And I used to play music, so I figured it was from like playing music too loud and stuff. But then when I got to the doctor, they're like, no, it's too significant to be music. They're like, it's something else. Like, and they don't know what caused it. There's a lot they still don't know about hearing loss. And so I had to get a cochlear implant. And are you familiar with cochlear implants at all? I know.
Yeah, okay. You can explain though for people who aren't familiar.
Yeah, no problem. So the cochlear implant has an internal and an external component, and it's a hearing device. And what they do is there's underneath my skull, they surgically implanted a chip that's attached to these electrodes. And they pump those into through your skull, through your ear canal, so that way it functions like the hair follicles. And so it's digital. And then there's an external component that attaches with a magnet. So once I turn on my processor and attach it, then it turns on. And what really sucks about it, though, is because after you get the surgery, you can't hear for a long time because your body has to relearn how to hear all over again. And it's a hard process. So when I first got mine turned on, it sounded like, those old school dial-up modems, all those kind of weird ticks and beeps and stuff. Yeah, it sounded like those. Yeah, and it was like that for over a year. It was about a year and some when I started being able to hear again. But I had to relearn it, and it was a slow, long process. So it was during that time, though, that I started getting online and started just like debating atheists and stuff in some of these Facebook groups on Facebook. And so I was doing that for a while, and there was a guy that was always kind of watching me, always talking with me and watching me in these debates. And he's like, you should start a YouTube channel. And he was a guy that lived in Australia. And I was like, I didn't really watch a lot of YouTube. And I was like, I don't really know what that would be. I never thought about it before. And he's like, look, I'm going to send you a camera and all this stuff you need to get started. He's like, just do it and give it a shot. And so I did. And then, and we ended up here a couple of years later. So.
Wow. Was this another Christian?
Yeah. Yeah, as a Christian guy in Australia. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So have you been a Christian your entire life? Were you brought up in a Christian family?
No, I wasn't. No, so we weren't like we never went to church or anything, and we never even talked about God. And like my whole time kind of growing up, I was first introduced to the faith when I was 15. And so I went to a church with my aunt. But it was weird because I was introduced to this kind of Christianity that like now I just, just don't agree with at all. I just don't believe any of it. But it was really kind of cultish like, and it was really legalistic. And so like it kind of left like a weird kind of bad taste in my mouth afterwards. And so after that, I was kind of more agnostic, like sometimes believing in God, sometimes not believing in God. And then eventually I took a philosophy of religion class in college. And in philosophy of religion, we went through the arguments for God's existence and that sort of thing. And then that's when I started becoming convinced that God existed. One particular argument, the Kalam cosmological argument, I just was persuaded by. And then that's what kind of started me believing in God. And then I started visiting a bunch of different churches. And throughout visiting these different churches, I would start asking people questions about why they believe that their belief was true and why they believed other beliefs were false. And I keep getting all these kind of similar answers no matter what type of church I went to. And I mean, I went to like the Church of Scientology. I went to like every kind of church you can think of. Yeah. And kept getting the same kind of answers, like their life got better or, there's a bunch of kind of things that happened in their life that was like showed them that this church was true. So it was a lot of stuff like that. And then eventually I came across the evidence for the resurrection online and started studying that and was convinced by the argument for the resurrection.
Interesting. Okay. So you even went the Scientology route. And you said you had similar answers kind of across the board about why they believed whatever they were believing was right. So what did that answer look like?
Yeah, so it was mostly just those ones where people say their life has changed since they started joining this church or following God. And then they would say like there was all these kind of, usually like some sort of set of like coincidences or something, things that would happen that they couldn't explain elsewise. And then they would conclude that that was the reason why their church was true and they knew that God existed.
Wow. And this is for everyone, including like Scientology? This is just across the board?
Yeah. Yeah, across the board. Yeah, that's why it was so interesting to me too, because it's like when you start doing that, because you don't. I don't think like I wouldn't expect that, And so when I started talking to all these people, it was really strange to me because I said, man, there's something that's kind of embedded in human psychology, or I mean, who knows the explanation for it? Perhaps maybe God is using. God has given these people signs and stuff, but the problem with it is that, like, in my mind, it was that all of these different religions couldn't be true because they were all mutually exclusive, and so that was like the big problem in my mind. And so that's why that was kind of like my first kind of introduction into like looking at religion and stuff way more in depth. And that's when I started getting online more and studying these different religions and stuff and what they believe and so on.
Okay, so then what made you settle on Christianity over anything else?
Yeah, this is a long process too, because it's a lot of thinking and stuff. Even when I started doing the debates and stuff, part of it was me trying to figure out what I believed and stuff and looking at the evidence and then testing it with, my arguments with people who disagreed and stuff like that. But it was a long process, but really, I think it was like ultimately the historicity of the resurrection. I became convinced. All historians agree that Jesus was a real person who existed in history, and when you follow these sort of objective kind of standards and methods that they use in order to come to historical facts. I think that when you do that, you come across a lot of facts that I think is only explained by the fact that Jesus actually did raise from the dead. And so for me, that was like the thing where I spent a lot of time thinking about it too, like trying to run it around in my head, trying to like argue it with myself and with other people and so on. And I just slowly became more convinced of it. And I kind of got to the point where I realized that Christianity makes the most sense of all of reality. So it's not just like, this external reality as well, like say the beginning of the universe, when you look at that, or when you look at like, why is there something rather than nothing, like consciousness, when you look at that, but also with your internal world as well. So with your internal world too, you're like, why are humans this way? Why do we have this impulse where we have this like near universal agreement that you shouldn't do things that are wrong, like steal, kill, and rob, and lie, and all these things, but we still do those things, And so, like, it made sense to me of both the objective world and also my subjective world as well.
Aren't there other religions that kind of abide by the same rules, like people are bad or at least killing, stealing, murder, all that is bad and that you shouldn't do it, but we still do it. Doesn't that line up with a number of other religions?
Yeah, but I don't understand the explanation for why that's the case in these other religions, right? So, yeah, because I think in Christianity, if you have the view of like the sin nature and how we're all like, subject to being slaves to the sin nature, then it makes a lot more sense, in my opinion. And then Christianity is the only religion that actually solves this problem as well. You know what I mean? And so it's like you have this problem of like this perfectly holy God. And then so it's like, how could we live in the presence of a perfectly holy God, a perfectly moral God? How can we live in his presence unless we too are perfect? And so I think that Christianity actually takes the idea of sin a lot more seriously, because it's like God is so holy and he's so morally perfect and righteous that in order to be in his presence, we would also need to be holy and righteous. And so it's like, how do we solve that problem? Like, what is the problem and what is the solution? And that's what it really boils down to in my mind. And it's like Christianity solves it, because only in Christianity do you have God, who is also perfect. Of course, God is perfect, coming into our world, putting on human flesh and coming into our world and living that perfect life that we couldn't live. So that way, and then giving us that life as a sacrifice for us. And so when he's given us his life, in our place, then we can actually stand before God with his imputed righteousness, is what it's called, the doctrine of imputed righteousness. But we have that righteousness now, so that way we can be in heaven. If that makes sense.
Exactly. And on top of that, it's the only one that solves the issue of how you can even, of what it means to, So the other thing that Jesus did for us is that he solved the issue that we have of how we can even come before a holy God through his sacrifice. Okay, every other religion says that you must work and do things in order to come before God, whereas Christianity flipped it around completely on its head. God came down, God did the work so that we can be saved and we can live with that with the benefits of that sacrifice. And so that's really what the amazing thing is about Christianity, and it's the only one that makes any sense. What kind of a God would need me to do something for him? Okay, if a God needs me to do something for him, that's a weak God and can't save you. But the God that comes down and does it for you and then gives it to you for free, with only needing your faith to give it and apply it to you, that's the power of Christianity. That's the power of Jesus Christ, and that's so much more powerful than any other God that I've ever even heard of.
Yeah, it does. This is where I've had a difficult time understanding. Why would the act of sacrifice, Jesus which is he's basically sacrificing himself. He agrees to do this.
Yeah.
Why does that save people?
Yeah. And so maybe I probably didn't articulate this well, but really it's because we have to have, so when you look at the Bible as a whole, even starting at the Old Testament, what you have is like humans are separated from God. They're separating themselves from God because they're trying to go their own way. And so like our sin nature believes that we can get all of our happiness. We don't need God. We can get all of these things apart from God, right? Mm-hmm. And so we separate ourselves from God through sin. But if you look at the Old Testament too, there was always a sacrifice of a perfect animal. It was like they had these unblemished animals and stuff in the Old Testament, and then they would be used as a mediator between God because of the pureness of the animal, and it was really kind of symbolic too at that time as well. Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, kinda. So
okay,
I get that as a mediation between. Okay, I can kind of understand that. I've just had a hard time these things resonate with me on a level that I can't exactly describe, but I've had a hard time understanding, why is it sacrifice? Why is that that's what saves you?
Yeah, it's
complicated.
It really is complicated, and I think that something that really helped me to understand why it is that Jesus Christ needed to come down and go through earthly trials, and I mean trials not in the trials not in the sense of hardships. I mean trials literally in the sense of legal trials. So if you look at the system that God created to save us, it's a legal system. Okay, So when Jesus Christ came down and lived a perfect life, he was living a perfect and sinless life, and he is the creator of the universe. And then he was tried, and he was actually physically accused of sins that he did not commit. Okay, he was tried and convicted of sins that he did not commit, and he was then punished for those sins. And because of that, legally, God can apply our sins to Jesus Christ when we take on his name. Okay, so if you look at like Walmart, if there's an employee of Walmart that messes up, puts a mop bucket out and spills it, and you slip and trip and fall, it's not the employee at Walmart that ends up paying. It's actually Walmart, the corporation, because you took on their name by wearing that blue vest and going and working in the store under the manager. Okay, and it's the same thing in war. For a good portion of things, if there's something that a unit of men do, the commander's the one that's responsible for that. And so when we take on Jesus Christ's name, we become legally our sins are able to be transferred over to Jesus Christ. And so I don't know if that helps out anybody, but for me, that legal process, it really changed the way that I think about it. God came down and fulfilled a legal process that he set up in order that we can be saved. So God and Jesus are both God. They are part of what's called the Trinity. It's God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Okay, but they were not the same entity when Jesus Christ was on earth. So does that make sense? It really doesn't. There's no way for us as humans to understand the Trinity. But what the Bible teaches is that there are three personalities or three persons. I don't want to defame God or decrease his how magnificent he is, but there are three entities or beings or not spirits, because one of them is the Holy Spirit, that exist in the Godhead. Yes, separate persons but one being, I guess could also be another way you say it. Again, I don't want to say it incorrectly and blaspheme, of course, but yes, have a talk with Scott. Yes, separate persons but one person. I probably said that and messed it up, but that's not the actual official teaching. I don't think the way you would say it. But yeah, it's different, than other religions where there would be three separate gods. But the reason why you can't have three separate gods is because you can't. They're not three separate beings. They're all perfect in their unity together. And then there's three aspects that work in our world. There's God the Father, and then God the Son actually comes into our world, and the Holy Spirit works in our world to convict us of our sins. So it's kind of like three different, I guess personalities is the best way to say it. So we'll get back to the interview. Maybe they'll talk about it.
It is. No, it is. I think it's because you would need, like, kind of like going back to that example, what I said about like being in a perfect God's presence, you need perfection of that sort, right? And so if you aren't perfect, the way you become rightly related to God is through a sacrifice of someone that is perfect. And so like Jesus is the fulfillment of the New Testament. So Jesus becomes that unblemished lamb, that perfect sacrifice for us, because his life is perfect. And so it's his imputed righteousness that we get from believing. And so if we believe, we get that imputed righteousness on our behalf. So that way God sees, because of God's perfect mercy and justice as well too, right? I'm jumping over topics, I'm sorry, but on his perfect, okay, good. So his perfect, so God is perfect in justice, right? And so if a judge is perfectly just, he has to punish every single wrongdoing, right? And it's also the thing that's separating us between God, right? But God is also perfectly merciful. And so because he's perfectly merciful, he made a way for us to be rightly related to him. And that was through the sacrifice of Jesus. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So Jesus took on the punishment in that aspect.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad we delved into that a little bit. I think that's what stuck. Like when I so last summer, I had the same kind of experience that you said you saw everywhere, which was a whole bunch of really strange things happened. They lined up, and then when I started believing, my life changed. So it was like too many weird things that I couldn't explain happened until God was the most logical explanation. And then once I started believing, my life changed for the better. So that sounds like
Yeah.
what people experience regardless of whatever religion they're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did land on Christianity, and one of the things that kind of had me like stuck a little bit. And I started going to this church. I finally found a church. I wanted to talk to you about this too, about the importance of finding a church, because my husband, so he's been Christian for his entire life, and in the last year we were in Tennessee and things, and he kept pushing me to go to church, and I'd go to church and I'd be like, it wasn't resonating. The pastor, I felt, was posturing. Like, it felt like I was listening to a cult. Like, it's just, I had a whole bunch of warning things go off in my head. And I'm like, I'm not that interested in, not to like talk negatively about churches, but I wasn't that interested in going to like a gymnasium and listening to somebody posture under fluorescent lights for my Sunday. I was like, it's not, sorry, I can't even fake me liking this for you. It's like, I can't do it. I'm pretty disagreeable. And we looked around, and then we found this pastor in like just north of Miami, and he's he's good. He's great. So we're going there, and that's amazing. And I don't get any like weird culty vibes. What's been your experience with churches?
Man, it's so interesting because I didn't grow up in a church going home or anything like that. Church has always been weird to me in some ways.
Yeah, me too.
It's like, it's the strangest thing, because it's like, man, like the facade, it feels like that a lot of people put on. It's like, you have like all the Ned Flanders type Christians, and stuff like that. It's awkward, you know what I mean? And so it's like that, those churches kind of turn me off. And so we found a church too that was where people seem to be normal. Like, I just want to meet normal people and have normal conversations, you know what I mean? And so, and then learn like a normal person, And so like, I think especially for us, like as millennials, I think like we want like just authenticity, like people that are just authentic, an authentic community, But I agree. I mean, it's been tough for me too, like just to kind of not only just feel like I belong, you know what I mean, but also be able to feel like I'm gonna learn something too, and I'm not just hearing like completely like anecdotal, like just stories or something that's like mostly story. Like, I like to learn when I go to church too, which I don't know how most people are, but anyways, so I always had a kind of an uncomfortable relationship with church as well. So.
Okay, that's good. I think one of the reasons I talked to my dad about it too, because he talks about the importance of community and everything. And my mom, she's Catholic at the moment. She's been going to church, and I was like, I can't do it. And he was like, yeah, the reason we never went to church, like we were always taught the psychological significance of the Bible, not the Bible being real. Like that's what I was taught. But he was like, part of the reason we didn't go to church was because they're just like, it was fake. It felt fake. Felt like people posturing. It felt fake. And I couldn't stand it. And I was like, okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's, I think I would have probably, like, if I'd gone to or been introduced to a community of people, maybe I was pretty skeptical, so maybe it wouldn't have worked. But as a kid, instead of kind of the churches that just feel a little, like Ned Flanders ish, but like, okay, so that's normal. That's good. And maybe from not being in it, maybe less tolerance for that. Just get, okay.
Agreed.
Cool.
And I think another issue that especially Christianity here in the United States faces is that we've had 2,000 years of just extra stuff that's accumulated on top of Christianity and what Christianity really is. Originally Christianity was a very simple and basic relationship with Jesus Christ, and it would follow exactly what you would look at in the New Testament. And, that's what Jesus set up, was what we see in the New Testament. But slowly over time, well, not slowly, even quickly, you see in the New Testament, the epistles where Paul and others are writing to churches that are having these issues where they're going off and they're becoming, not Christian. They're adding on things that aren't Christian to their belief systems. And so, over 2,000 years, we have 2,000 years of extra biblical traditions that have sprung up and have defiled the true religion of Christianity. And so there's a lot of churches where the type of building you're in matters, or there's a bishop and a pope or all these people that are above you and in between you and your relationship with God. And I think that what's important is that you find a church that takes away all those barriers. The pastor isn't some person that's in charge of your religion. A pastor is not in charge of you and your sin and what you do in your own personal life. They're there to guide you and to lead their flock, and they're in charge of that space in that time to a certain extent, but they can't excommunicate you from the true church. They can't, kick you out and do anything to you. And so we need to reevaluate what our relationship is with the church and base it on the Bible and what the Bible teaches, and not 2,000 years of your church's specific traditions. And I'm coming from a tradition of I grew up in a Baptist church, and I think that there's a lot of great things about Baptist churches, but I think there's a lot of silly things. For a long time in that tradition, there was no dancing, no alcohol. They were very serious about, which translation of the Bible you used. It was basically KJV only, and not only, but it was heavily leaning towards KJV. And so there's a lot of extra stuff that gets built up and added onto Christianity that isn't there in the Bible. And so I'm at a great, Bible believing church right now. And, every Sunday the pastor goes through the next portion of the Bible that he's reading through, just straight on through books. And I think that's kind of the best way to do it. I don't like topical sermons personally. I think that allows for the pastors to ignore things and not teach what exactly the Bible teaches. But yeah, so that's my 2 cents on this, and let's see what else they have to say.
I agree. Yeah, I was going to ask too, what was it like? I've always kind of been curious. So if your dad kind of has more of that psychological perspective, have you seen my videos on your dad? Any of them? Or no?
I saw one pop up on YouTube. I haven't watched it though. Okay,
no worries. Okay, because I kind of analyzed kind of his perspective. But do you think your perspective differs from his in that sense? Because you have more of an objective kind of view of Christianity, right? This actually happened. Is that right? That's what I thought. And what do you think caused that difference? Just kind of curious.
So I think Dad goes back and forth. I think the longer he's talking about it, the more he's moving towards the objective view. Okay. I think understanding as much about psychology as he does, there's psychological significance to the Bible, and I believe it's objective, right? Yeah. So there's psychological significance to every aspect of the Bible in multiple ways, plus it's objective. And so I think he probably got wrapped up in the psychological significance. And honestly, if you have more of a scientific background, we were told for a very long time that science, if you believed in science, then you couldn't believe in the Bible, which I think is ridiculous. I don't think that was necessary at all. Those two things didn't have to be polar opposites. So I think he got wrapped up in that, but I also think that he's writing a book at the moment called We Who Wrestle with God.
Cool.
Yeah, it's going to be intense. And he thinks he can disprove atheism. So I would say he's whatever direction that's in, he's going in. So I'm looking forward to that book.
Well, because it seems like he has I think he's done a talk on it. I haven't watched it though, but on the problem of perception, which is a kind of a philosophical problem of how do you get from the subjective to the objective. And so when I've heard a lot of his stuff, it seems like that's where kind of the barrier is. It's okay, we have the psychological world, the narrative world, I think he calls it a lot of times too. But then how do you go from that to what's objective, what's external of your consciousness and your conscious perception? And so I think that's where it seems like that holds him back, where that's probably not necessarily a barrier for you in that sense.
I think it wasn't a barrier for me because so many strange things have happened to me. Even as a kid, I was so sick. I was suffering so much. I can remember when I had my hip and ankle replaced, and I was in so much pain. It was unbelievable for an entire year, broken bones, but not able to be fixed. And I remember thinking at that point that something had to be real. I didn't know if God was real, but that amount of pain and suffering, something evil had to be real.
I see.
And then things have been super weird with my life, like being that ill, like unbelievably, stupidly, like Job level ill. I remember reading Job and being like, I've got a lot of those things going on. Like my family hasn't died, but like a lot of those things are going on. And then fixing it with a diet that like nobody believed, right? And like, what is that about? And then having my mom get really sick, and then my dad get really sick, and then my dad get famous for like, it's just things have been so absurd that it's like, that stuff could have happened. It seems logical. Life's pretty weird.
Yeah, that is, because you have had a different life. Like, I was thinking what it'd be like for you too, to like, you're living your life and then all of a sudden your dad like explodes into social consciousness, like out of nowhere too. That would throw everything off as well too. And then it's like all the stuff you went through as a kid and the autoimmune aspects that you had too, and then trying the new diet that nobody else is. People think you're probably like, they're like, what is that? Right? Like, so that would be, so it makes sense to me why, like, you kind of like, start processing things a different way.
Yeah. The other thing I do think contributed to this, and I've had some like negative feedback about this, but I did do, and this was, mostly because I was interested in them, but I did do psychedelics quite a bit. I haven't done them in a while, but I did do them quite a bit. And I think that really, and I'm not saying that's the way to do it. People are like, that's not how you have to do it. I'm like, yes, I agree. But I think for me, it like put me in a state where I was seeing things that aren't there. And that for whatever reason, was like, well, those experiences probably led me to believe God was a possibility, because you can't see him exactly, right? You kind of see things that happen, kind of, but like you have to believe. There isn't like, that's, I think one of the things I didn't understand until more recently was there isn't like, at least this is, and I still believe this, there isn't some definitive proof that everyone is going to believe that like, oh, well, here's the proof of God. Although I think Dad maybe in his new book is trying to do something like that. But regardless, like you have to suspend judgment a little bit, right? You have to believe. I do think psychedelics helped me do that, because they showed me things I couldn't see. What do you think about that? What's your opinion on those?
No, that's a great question. So my thinking about it is like, it's almost like everything else. I think all of us need to get out of our own way in some way. But it's like, for example, when people go to prison, right? Like, and then they find God in prison, which happens to a lot of people. Being poor, being homeless. So these sorts of things, like God can use these different kind of situations in order to point us to himself. And so I think like, it's not a prescriptive thing. I wouldn't say like people need to go try psychedelics to find God, right? Because I think that's just the means in which God used because God uses us through the things like that we do and the things we do wrong, and like all of these different ways, like everything that we do, God can still use any of these things in order to draw us to himself. So I think in that time, God just used that moment, I guess, in that aspect. Or at least you were open to it, I guess, from that, and then God was knocking on the door. I mean, so in some way, so my thinking on it is like, I mean, I think that like the Bible tells us to be sober minded. So, so whatever that entails, but I wouldn't say that you should do psychedelics, in that aspect. But I think that in this aspect, it's like it was, God used it for good. He turns all things around for good for those that love him. So
this episode is brought to you by Better Fed Beef. The holidays are here. Let's be honest. Pretty much everyone prefers beef to ham or turkey. So why not treat some really bad, like really dark beef for 25% off your order? It's a good deal. Check them out. It's what I eat. I like them. Okay. That's kind of the conclusion I've come to. Like there were a couple of things. It was like that was like a little push, and then some really bad, like really dark, desperate moments, at the like rock bottom is probably when I converted.
Yeah. Like, because I remember hearing your story. I don't think, so it's crazy because I said, so when I talked earlier about like everybody having these kind of coincidences and stuff like that, I would still put that in that same category. I'd say like, I don't know the cause. Like, so the cause could be God, right? And I'd say that it could be other things, but regardless, God still used that situation to draw you to himself. And so in that aspect, I mean, that's like, I'm not against experiences or anything like that. I guess for me, I just think that we need to try to tether them and balance them out with objective reality, so that way we know like what's true. Because you figure, say you have an experience about Muhammad or something like this, right? You convert to Islam and you become a terrorist, right? So like that wouldn't be good, you know what I mean? And so it's like you want to try to like what is actually true, you know what I mean? And if it's like whatever's actually true, we want to have our beliefs correspond with reality and try not to go off the deep end.
And that's why the Bible is such an important document to read. And I'd say you should be reading it every single day. Not that I live up to that standard, but I should be. And so, you have to be reading the Bible in order to read what it says about the world. That's our objective truth. That is 100% perfect and complete. And then we compare that to what we see in our world and in reality, and we can have a better understanding of what the world is and how it works.
Yeah, I like that. I've probably had so many strange things happen to me too that I don't believe, a bunch of the things I believed in kind of crumbled over the last, probably since 2016, like media, anything I read in the media. I don't know if anything online I read is true. And then anything the government says, I have no idea if anything they say is true. And I don't know how deep that goes. And then it's like even censoring on social media platforms. It's like, oh, that sounds like paranoia. And then Elon Musk buys Twitter and is like, nah, you weren't being paranoid enough. And it's just like, I think I've probably switched over to trying to understand things intuitively, which is something I would have just like murdered myself over if I'd heard myself say that as like a 17-year-old. It's like, oh, you're going on intuition. Okay, there. But I think I've probably switched over to like, no, I know on some level that feels right. And that's probably been strengthened since converting. I think that's gotten easier. Like I never understood before if I did things, if you lie, and anybody, including people who aren't like religious, know that if you lie, you feel bad. And it can just feel like soul crushingly shivering, like deep, evil bad when you lie. Why would it feel like that? Like, why would it feel that evil when you lie? I mean, for a normal person, it should feel like that. And I think it does line up with sin and Christianity making you feel that way.
Yeah, I think because the way I kind of look at it is like you have these natural laws, like say the law of gravity, so you have these natural laws like thermodynamics and these things that govern the physical universe. But it seems like there's a natural law of love that governs us inside of the universe, our kind of moral selves. Because when we get out of alignment with that, like we can't allow ourselves, because we have free will, I believe, so we can't allow ourselves to get more hearted and stuff towards stuff. And that's why C.S. Lewis talked about like, when you continue to do stuff, you either become a better person or a worse person from all your little decisions, because when you do something bad, it's easier to do something bad the next time. And same with being good, But the aspect of like everybody having this kind of moral awareness of some sort, even though they're going to differ on stuff, depending on background information, but there's a moral awareness of some sort that I think is interesting, because I think it makes more sense on theism that God created us with this morality on our hearts, as the Bible says. That makes more sense to me than some sort of evolutionary explanation.
Yeah, it's hard to chalk up. One of the disagreements I had, although my husband I think is converting over, is like whenever I heard about Christians, especially like as a kid, I was like, oh, Christians, the people who don't believe in evolution. Like that's what I knew about Christians, the people who don't believe in evolution. And so I've talked, what's your opinion on this? Okay. And then I'll tell you my opinion. You go first. What's your opinion on evolution?
Okay. So here's my thinking. So and this is a complex thing, and I'm not too far into it because I don't see it as really a stumbling block for a lot of people today. A lot of the younger generations, they don't really care if evolution is true or not in order to believe in God. So that's why I don't spend a ton of time focusing on it. But my thinking goes something like this. When I look at the Bible, you have 66 books, written over a span of 1,500 years, 3 different continents, that aspect. But all of the different books, you have to understand what the genre is, right? So when I look at like Psalms, I understand that's not a historical genre, you know what I mean? And when I look at the Gospels, I understand that it is ancient Roman bio, you know what I mean? So I can understand it through that lens. And so you want to understand each book of the Bible through its appropriate lens. So it's like the Proverbs are not like, okay, these are promises, because the Proverbs on promises is wisdom, it's Proverbs, you know what I mean? And so understanding that now in most places in the Bible is pretty clear and pretty straightforward. But there's some places in the Bible where we're not exactly sure what it is for different reasons. And so when it comes to the book of Genesis, at least Genesis 1 through 12, it seems that there's something more going on than it just being this like historical narrative. It seems to be blending in just sort of like the stories of the culture at that time in the ancient Near East, blending in these stories for a theological purpose. That's the way I understand it, at least, is because it seems like from a theological purpose rather than just a strict historical purpose. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me logically when I'm looking at it and then looking at the different accounts and that sort of thing. And then also reading all of the literature in the ancient Near East as well, too, that's available. But I think, so when it comes to that, and so I think about through that lens, and then I look at the world, you know what I mean, and try to see what makes more sense. I can't see the world making sense to me for it to be 6,000 years old. That doesn't logically make sense to me. And it doesn't seem like it corresponds with reality. You can have ways around it, but we can talk about those later if needed. But then I think you have bigger problems. So if you say God created it with the appearance of age, then I think you have bigger problems, because then how can you know anything at all, really? You know what I mean? Because the whole epistemic system is broken. And so that's a problem for me. But I'd say that what I found to be the most persuasive, and again, I've only read a few books on this, but what I found to take as the most persuasive evidence for evolution would be like the pseudogenes. So for example, whales have like these OR genes, they're oscillatory receptors. And so they're used for detecting violet chemicals outside of water, but these genes are dormant. And so you figure if God created the whale just as is, then why would he create it with these genes? You know what I mean? Because they're not being used. So I think that's probably some of the bigger evidence, but I still think that there's so many gaps in the fossil record. So so it's really tough. I haven't come to any like strong conclusions on it, but I think that there's something like some sort of, well, everybody believes in evolution to some degree, like there's some sort of evolving process, but I don't tend to hold to the view. I don't think that you have these different kinds of animals. I hate using that term, but so these different kinds of animals turning into other kinds of animals. So like the distinction I make with like macroevolution, that doesn't seem as plausible to me, but there is some sort of thing going on where you have these creatures that are like, that have clearly shown some sort of evolution from, being land animals, water animals, so on, so there's clearly some sort of evolution going on. I just don't think that it's that one blanket term of like everything comes from a single common, can't remember the term they use for it, but just like one like an amoeba or something like that. Yeah. Common ancestor.
All right, before we get into what Mikhaila believes, I think I'm going to go through and kind of talk about what John believes here. So I have been studying this for 20 years, and what you should come to realize is that every single bit of information and data that a scientist has is interpreted. Okay, so you can't just pick up a rock and go, "This is this rock." Well, that's that geologist's interpretation, because they named a rock with those characteristics that kind of a rock. Okay, and so when a scientist comes and tells you that one ring on a tree is the same as 1 year in real life, well, that's their interpretation. We need to do a lot more studying in order to determine if that is correct or if it is not. And fortunately with trees, we can do studying. We can do tests to determine if one ring on a tree equals roughly a year in real life. And so with tree rings, we can be fairly confident that 1 year in a tree ring is equal to 1 year in real life. The problem comes when you then extrapolate that out to geology. And so what we look at in geology is they go, oh, well, there's one layer here, and there's another layer on top of that. Well, this layer is X number of years, and that layer is X or Y number of years, and then the layers on top of them. And the problem is, unlike with a tree, there is no way to test whether or not that one layer is actually that number of years. Whereas with a tree, we can go grow a tree, wait 2 or 3 years, and go and find that it has 2 or 3 rings. We cannot do that with the Earth, okay? Especially when we're talking about millions of years time span. And so everything that makes the Earth look old is based on an interpretation from a scientist. He didn't go out and look at a rock and say, well, that had to have taken 1 million years to form. John didn't do that. And that's okay. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody's supposed to do that. But we need to be very skeptical of the people that do, and then come to you and give you a definite answer as to how old something is or how long something should have taken to form. And what we've actually come to see from even secular scientists, so they're not scientists, but, not just scientists, but over on the Joe Rogan podcast, where Mikhaila's father got very famous, over on the Joe Rogan podcast, he's had on Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock, and he's talked to them. And what they say, and what I agree with in general, because this is what we actually see in the record, is that the Earth changes cataclysmically and fast, okay? So they believe that essentially something that happened about 12,000 years ago caused a giant worldwide flood. And if you look at what they say, a lot of their stuff lines up with the biblical account. And they say that was 12,000 years ago. And the fact is that the Bible doesn't say that the earth was created 6,000 years ago. It could have been created longer ago than that. And what we are basing our numbers on is our genealogies. And these genealogies might not be 100% complete. And there could be gaps, there could be places where they could add in more time. And so it doesn't have to be specifically 6,000 years old. That was just adding the ages together of the genealogies in the Bible to get that number. And I'm not sure that that's exactly the way that you would or should go about doing that. And so, again, what we see in science is that the earth changes cataclysmically, dramatically, in very short periods of time. That's also what we see in the beginning of Genesis. The way I like to read Genesis personally, and the way that I think it makes the most sense, is if we read it as if you are a computer programmer who is writing the code for a new computer game. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do if you're trying to code or develop a video game is you're going to make space. You have to define that there is a space, okay? And so that space is going to be defined. It's not going to have a light source, and so it's going to be, by default, it's going to be dark. But as soon as you add a light source, you're dividing the light from the dark, okay? And so you could go through a whole video and explain the book of Genesis as if you were a computer programmer writing a computer program to simulate the world. And that's essentially what God did. And the people that believe in like Elon Musk, who believe that we live in a simulation, I agree. We do live in a simulation. It's just one that was created by God, and one that the Creator entered into to come down and save us from our sins. And so I think that's the more proper way to look at it, is actually the way that Elon Musk and lots of influential billionaires look at it, is not as if evolution created us, but as if it's more like a video game where it got turned on. And so for me, my personal belief is that God created us exactly as it was described in Genesis. I think that in that sense, it is history. So he said that there's different books of the Bible that are different genres. And of course, that's true. There are books that are predominantly one genre or predominantly another. But no single book only has one genre or one filter through which you should look at it. And so, like the Psalms, there is history to be found in the Psalms. There's actually history written in advance found in the Psalms. It's a book of prophecy. But you can also learn things about Israel's history through the book of Psalms because of the way that it is talked about. It talks about different campaigns that David was on and different things that David did in his life. So we can learn about history through the Psalms, but that's not necessarily the primary way you should look at it. And so I think that's where I kind of disagree with what John's saying here. My belief is that there is very little evidence to suggest that there is any kind of macroevolution where a whale turns into a, over time, slowly over time. Obviously, the whale itself doesn't, but its ancestors slowly over time begin to walk on land. What I would suggest as far as the genetics goes and how this whale has this gene that supposedly does this thing, we have no idea what genes do. We have vague understandings of what some portions of genes do, but we have no idea the bulk of what our DNA is for. And so when I was growing up in the 90s and 2000s, as they were mapping the genome, they believed that there was what was called junk DNA or useless DNA. And that was actually the most of it. There was like 5% that they believed was useful DNA, and then 95% was complete junk. And what we've slowly found out over time is that this stuff that we thought was junk is actually interacting with other DNA in weird ways that we couldn't even imagine or process. And so I think that's what's happening with DNA. Is there's a ton of stuff that interacts that, yes, it does have that one property in mammals that are on land, but you also need that section of code if you're a whale underwater because of this one crazy scenario that God needed to prepare that whale to be ready for. And so to me, evolution just doesn't even make sense. How do you go from a dog to another animal? We've been breeding dogs for thousands of years with the intent of creating new things, and we can't even breed a dog into something that isn't a dog. Okay? So if we can't intentionally breed a dog into something that isn't a dog, how could evolution unintentionally, randomly come upon and stumble upon that effect? It doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, so what I've thought about, and I've had this discussion with my husband, because I don't think he'd really thought about it before. It was like, who cares?
Okay.
But
Right,
I took biomedical science, a bunch of courses of biomedical science. So I got taught evolution. So, and I remember learning about Darwin and things. So I've known this for a long time. I think that we've done quite a bit of research going back towards the Big Bang, that scientifically, I believe what the scientific community is saying. I think that lines up with the Bible. I just don't think the day period is right. So when it's God created the world in 7 days, it's I don't necessarily think that one of those days for God is the same as one of these 24-hour days for us. That's the most logical explanation to try and line up both of those things, because otherwise I can see why people say that they don't line up. But I think, one of the things that dissuaded me from Christianity or made me look at Christians they didn't know what they were talking about was I put them in the same category as flat earthers. I just, as a kid, for whatever reason, and I don't know if that's because I was in I just wasn't around Christian people at all, but I just put them in or I was watching too much Simpsons. I'm not sure what it was, but yeah.
I think so too, because and it's always tough because it's I respect people who really take the Bible seriously, you know what I mean? And we should take the Bible seriously too. But sometimes it's they don't take it seriously enough, where they kind of do the interpretive analysis with a lot of stuff. Because you even said too, with the day, the day theory too, with Yom is the word for day. And then you have these different, you have the word appearing, later on in the Old Testament too, referring to different periods of time. Then also, the scripture.
Wait, say that again. So say that again. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. So, so the word for day in the Old Testament is Yom, I believe, if my memory serves me right. It's been a while since I've looked at this.
Yes, the word for day in Hebrew is Yom, is in one of the, I think it's the highest holy day of the Jewish religion is Yom Kippur. I think it's the Day of Atonement, I believe is the translation. So yes, Yom is day in Hebrew. One interesting theory that another person we've watched on this channel a number of times is Chuck Missler. He presents a very speculative theory that because of relativity, so if you're not familiar with Einstein's theory of relativity, time travels at different rates at different points in the universe, and that depends on how close you are to large sources of gravity. Gravity warps what is called space-time. It's a whole complicated mess, but essentially the way that we perceive time here on Earth flowing is not the way that time flows up in space farther away from the center of the Earth. And so one of the technologies that proves that this is the case is GPS technology. So if you look at the global positioning system, it has to account for this difference in time here on the surface of the Earth versus up in space. And so that is called time dilation. Supposedly there is a scientist who did some calculations and believes that the rate at which time travels at the edges of the universe is actually such that it would only have been 6 days since creation at the edges of the universe. And I know that sounds insane, but there's actually some scientific understanding to back up that seeming insanity. And so there may be a way to square it being, the universe being billions of years old, with, with God saying it's only 6 days. I tend to think that God did it in those 6 days because there's nothing that would stop him from being able to do it. That's my personal opinion, and that it's more like a computer programmer writing code for a computer program. I think that's probably the closest analogy we could have to what God was doing.
Stuff. But I know you have later on in the Old Testament too, you have this word used, and it's not referring to just a single linear day.
That's interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and so because of that, so it does allow for different interpretations of that passage. But I think too, it comes down to that genre, and because we're not super aware of what that genre is, I think that we should be open-minded to say, how should we interpret this? But the way I look at it is that everything is theological at its core. So what is the theological point that we get from it? And then how does that apply to the rest of the Bible, the story of the Bible, and also to our personal lives as well?
Cool. Okay. That's cool. What denomination do you practice?
Just a non-denomination.
Can you practice a denomination? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. I guess denomination. Yeah. Well, it's funny because my wife is from Tennessee, and out there's like all this beef between like the Baptists and the Church of Christ and stuff, because everybody identifies as Christian out there. But like out in Colorado here, like I'm just happy to see people who are Christians and taking it seriously, because we don't really do too many denominations out here. There's no denomination beef that I'm aware of, at least. But yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. Probably same kind of thing. Well, Toronto's pretty atheist, or even maybe agnostic, but mostly atheist. I think there's a lot of Catholicism and Orthodoxy, and then Christian, like other non-denominational, I guess.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Have you been looking at the denominations at all, or is it kind of like not really? Okay. Didn't think so.
No, not really. Whatever like Protestant is, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know. I probably don't know enough about it to like come to a conclusive decision, but I feel like there's just like little differing rules, right?
Yeah. It's like different preferences, basically. So
I'm going to cut them off at the pass here. It's not basically different preferences. So again, we have 2,000 years of church history. And so over those 2,000 years, they take things that existed in the New Testament time. There are bishops mentioned in the New Testament. There are pastors and priests. There's actually, I don't think there are any priests mentioned in Christianity, but there are, there's pastors and bishops, and they have these offices that are mentioned. And then what happens is there are different church structures that build on top of that. And so you'll see with ultimately in 300, the Catholics really started to add on a lot of structure to their church. And so they added in priests and, a pope that is over the priests and the bishops. And so there's a lot of different church structures that I think take away from the teachings of Christianity. And so what Christianity teaches is that there's one mediator between God and man, that is the man Christ Jesus. He came down, suffered, died, and then rose again so that we can be assured of our resurrection. And what the churches add on to that are people that are responsible for your faith. And so the first person that would be added on that's responsible for your faith would be your pastor, or in some denominations they call them priests. And they make this differentiation between a priest and you, whereas in the Bible there is no differentiation between you and a priest. In fact, every single believer in Jesus Christ who takes on his name and believes in their heart that he rose from the dead, every single person that does that is a priest of the Most High God. And there are these different denominations make differentiations between those groups. They have the priests and they have the laity, and a priest is responsible for the laity and not the other way around. And that's just completely wrong and leads to horrible abuses. And that's the differences between the denominations, basically. On top of that, they add on traditions and other extra biblical things, but the main difference is the structure of the church and who is responsible for your faith. And that's the issue.
A lot of them. I mean, so some people like like different styles and different kind of cultures. And it's one of the things that makes Christianity kind of beautiful as well, I think, in aspect too, is like you have these different ways of expressing your worship and these sorts of things too, But the denomination fact makes sense to me, why we have so much plurality in denominations. And I think the Bible kind of explains we all have this tendency to like want to elevate ourselves and elevate things that we think are important, and pride and this sort of thing. And so I think that's the other aspect of it. There's a good side to it and a bad side, but the bad side is we like to divide. Like we like to divide on things that might not be as critical as we like to think they are, because they're important to us. We assume they're important to God, in that aspect. So we're like, well, this is super important because I feel strongly about this. And you'll see that with all the different kind of theological accounts. But I think at least on the Bible, it makes sense, because I don't see how it makes sense on other religions, back to what we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. No, fair enough. Ooh, okay. This is a good one. Have you seen more churches becoming woke? Do you think this is creeping into churches?
Yeah. So I guess the question is, what do you mean by woke, right? So do you mean woke in like some sort of like just liberalized sense, or?
For an extreme example, is I saw one church with a transgender Jesus. I mean that kind of woke.
That's woke.
That's woke. Yeah, I guess changing, not teaching parts of the Bible because it doesn't line up with more progressive attitudes. Have you seen this happening, or is this like right-wing propaganda that isn't real?
Oh, it certainly is happening. I can point to churches, down the road in different places that have those same sorts of things. And it's been very interesting seeing maybe not slow, but seeing how they've morphed slowly over time. And knowing that the church that I'm thinking of was a woke church before the term woke existed. So this is back in the early 2000s. Allowing for female pastors and certain things, those were things that you could look out for before, and those have only gotten worse and led to, well, first it was, female pastors, and then you could allow homosexual pastors, and now there's transgender pastors. And basically a church that starts to promote sin as if it's a virtue is a church that you should avoid, and is essentially a woke church, in my opinion.
That's a great question. I don't think it's as popular, and I could be wrong on this actually too, because I'd like to see a statistical analysis of it, but I don't think it's as popular, because even when I look at these type channels, these YouTube channels that are like these super progressive Christian channels, where they have like, these type of trans pastors or whatever, they don't tend to have a lot of followers either. So I don't think it's that attractive to a lot of people, a lot of these channels. So I see it more as like maybe like right wing taking advantage of a situation, you know what I mean, to show how bad the kind of liberal agenda is and that sort of thing. But I could be wrong on that too. I'm open to being corrected. But what I kind of see, like, this makes me think of what I kind of see as a problem with politics for Christians is that when you look at the Bible, you have all of these different things that don't fit nice and neatly into one category. And I think it was Tim Keller that talked about, like, for Christians, it'd say there's like there's four things. Like the Bible shows us that Christians should be sold out and against racial injustice. Christians should be deeply concerned about the poor and the marginalized. Christians should be pro-choice or pro-life. Pro-life, pro-life, and they should also and they also hold to belief in marriage is only between a man and a woman for a lifetime. And so because of that, you have two of them sound conservative, two of them sound liberal. You know what I mean? But the early church was defined by all four. You know what I mean? The early church was very clear about all four of these things. And so because of that, it kind of makes it bad, because if you go to church and say LA, a pastor's going to be vocal about two of them, and then kind of hush about the other two. And then it's the same thing if you go to church in Louisiana, right? You're going to have the church is going to be vocal about two and not vocal about the other two. But I think as Christians, we have to be, our worldview needs to be more integrated in terms of like a biblically grounded worldview, rather than it just being just solely one political side. I think we need to be open to saying like, what does the Bible say about these issues, rather than what do the conservative commentators say about these issues, and then trying to make that fit into the Bible and thinking that everything liberals say is wrong, you know what I mean, or vice versa, everything conservatives say is wrong. So I think we need more of a holistic approach that's more biblically grounded than it just being looking at one political group and thinking that they represent God and the other one doesn't per se, So that's my view on politics, where I think that could be somewhat of an issue for a lot of Christians, because there's a lot of pressure to conform all of your views over to just one side of the camp, rather than having more nuanced views that are in accordance with Scripture.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Do you think, actually, you'd know the statistics better than me, is Christianity still shrinking, or is it making a comeback more recently? Or do I just think it's making a comeback because I converted?
Yeah.
It's definitely making a comeback.
Yeah.
Well, if we look at what the Bible actually teaches, it teaches that the way is narrow, and that there are very few people that will find actual real faith and communion with God, unfortunately, compared to the masses that are going to end up in hell. And so, that even boils down to the person sitting next to you in the pew at church. You can't know if they're saved or not. You can't know if anyone else is or isn't saved. You can only know if you are. You're supposed to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, is what the Bible teaches. And so I think personally that there are many fewer people that are going to get into heaven than what we think. And what we need to worry about personally is our own personal relationship. I don't think we need to worry about other people so much. But, is Christianity growing? I hope so. I'm sure that there's a new Christian that's saved every day. So in that sense, it can only grow, because we're the only group of people who don't die off, right? We get to live forever with God. And so the only thing that Christianity can do is grow. It can't decrease. And so in that sense, yes, it's always growing. But is it, the predominant religion of this country? No, I don't think it is. I don't think it ever really was. I think it was a mask you had to wear in order to go out in public life and to be a person in our society decades or hundreds of years ago. But it's definitely not that way anymore.
No, that's another great question. I think from last I've looked, it's still shrinking. But
Okay.
What's interesting about it is it's like that same question of what do you mean by Christianity? Because a lot of people who identify as nuns, they say the nuns say that they don't want to be identified as a particular religion, but they're still just as likely to hold belief in God and belief in the Bible and their prayer life and this sort of thing too. They just don't like the connotations or whatever that Christianity is identified with. So this is what makes it kind of hard, because when we're asking a lot of these questions on these surveys, we're not asking some of the right questions. We're asking some of the questions that people are going to have to answer in a binary way, but it's more nuanced than that. And so I think that's where the issue is, because I think that I think there's probably still a high degree of people that believe in something like Christianity, but I mean, biblical literacy is so far low right now that it's hard to say what do these people mean too when they say they identify as Christians, have more of a view of culture or some sort of relative view of Christianity where everything is relative, and I'll take some parts of Christianity, some parts of Buddhism, or whatever, whatever works for my life. And so that's why I think a lot of the statistics make it hard to kind of tell what's really going on.
That makes sense. Do you get people like, I suppose your audience is mainly Christian. Do you get atheists watching you just out of curiosity?
Yeah. And I'm not sure the percentage, but yeah, I get comments from atheists that say they like my channel or whatnot, so, but yeah, no idea the percentage. I'm sure it's definitely a majority of Christian for sure, at least probably 90% at least, I'd assume, but yeah.
What made you want to debate people about this? Sounds like my worst nightmare.
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. For me, like, I like to hear different sides to everything that I'm considering, so that way I can think it through well on my own. Because I think, like, if I'm missing the other sides of the argument, then how am I supposed to weigh that? And then how am I supposed to communicate to people to try to convince them of the other side? And so it's really important to me, because that's why I did a lot of my fleshing out for like a lot of the early stuff that I came to believe. A lot of the fleshing out was me actually just debating it, and then trying to take into consideration what the other side was saying as charitably as possible, so that way I can understand what I even believe. So for me, it was like a lot of processing. Like today, I mean, I'm not that interested in debating people as much, but I mean, I don't really mind debates. Like they don't really worry me, but I'm not really that interested, because I think that the purpose they serve it's kind of limited in a lot of ways, because people are just more polarized on stuff, so like conversations are a lot better than just like, trying to prove your side, because then people will just shut down and won't take in any new information for the most part.
Who are your favorite, I don't know what the right word for this is. I'd say like thought leaders in the kind of online for Christians. Who do you follow?
Yeah. So I'd say, like, if we're going to say like my kind of main kind of influences that's had the biggest impact on how I think.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah. Outside of like Paul the Apostle is where like a lot of like my arguments and stuff I really formulate from Paul, which is interesting. But outside of like the Bible, I'd say William and Craig played a really big role in shaping how I think, because this is where I kind of learned how to think more deductively and think more philosophically and concise and make these distinctions and define words, so that way you can understand what you're saying at its foundation and then stack up. So he was a really big influence. Tim Keller was a really big influence because of his gospel-centric focus, which is similar to what I took influence for with my channel, is having more of a gospel centered focus to show people the relevancy of the gospel in their lives, and for non-believers too, to see how the gospel can make sense and integrate into their lives. And then my best friend is the other one. His name is Joey Fukumoto, but me and him, we've debated about everything, like everything. So it's like he helped me think better, because what we do is before we even like bring up some sort of like argument or something, we always know that we have to like define our terms. It's like, what do you mean by that? And how did you come to that conclusion? Those are two questions in the book Tactics. But like we're constantly doing this with each other. We like argue about everything, and it's really good and healthy, because he'll push me on stuff, I'll push him on stuff, and we both just keep getting sharper because of it. So we have to think things through better, because he doesn't let me get away with anything, and I don't let him get away with any kind of lazy thinking either. So I think that, and he's brilliant, by the way, he's way smarter than me. And so because of that, I think it's really kind of helped as well, kind of like, test out stuff with him and then try to argue with him about stuff and then figure stuff out together. So those are probably my top three influences, I'd say.
That's cool. Okay. That's fun. So you brought up before, so you said you had health problems too. You have this hearing thing, which is major.
Yeah.
How did that, and that's when you started kind of debating people online. You said you were first exposed to Christianity when you were 15, but in kind of a culty way, for lack of better words. What made you switch into taking it more seriously? Was it before you got sick?
No. That's what's kind of interesting about it. So really, it was like kind of during that hearing the last time when I was doing these debates, that's when I started kind of thinking way more about it than I ever thought before too. Like I thought a lot about it in college, taking philosophy of religion course and stuff, and after it, but kind of like it kind of reinvigorated that in me during that time. And then when it comes to like the gospel, that's a longer story, but that's when things really kind of changed for my life. I think is everything changed once I continued to start learning the gospel more, really working at understanding these different perspectives and stuff, and then internalizing that gospel message is when everything really changed. So I guess I can kind of run through it briefly, but so I guess when I first converted to Christianity, I wasn't really like that clear on the relationship between works and salvation, because I think everybody has like these kind of muddled views, but I think a Protestant problem, I'd say more so, is they have more of a muddled view of like, where do works fit in with salvation, this sort of thing. And so I had a view that's somewhat kind of like, I'd say most people probably have this, where it's like, well, if you're a Christian, you're going to be producing tons of good works. And then by looking at these good works, you can tell somebody's a Christian or not. But I remember there was a guy that came in to a reasonable faith meeting that I was teaching for locally, teaching on like apologetics and stuff. And he was asking these tough questions. He says, like, can a Christian live like Hitler and still be saved? You know what I mean? And which is questions that's super uncomfortable for people. You know what I mean? It's like, super uncomfortable because you want to say yeah, but then you're like, oh, that sounds so bad, you know what I mean? But you don't really, then you're like, no, that's too counterintuitive, but really, like, during this time I spent I think I spent about 2.5 years at least, I think, me and my friend too, my best friend, and also talking with a whole lot of other people, really working through all of these scriptures and stuff. What are these scriptures that seem to say works, and what do they say about salvation? And so we went through all these scriptures. We started talking and thinking through this stuff, and looking at all these different views and commentaries. And I became convinced that I think works, we're saved completely by grace. Grace is a free gift. We're saved completely by grace through faith. Yeah, completely by grace through faith. I don't think.
Amen. 100%. By grace through faith. That is how you are saved. You cannot be saved by your works. In fact, what the Bible and the New Testament specifically teaches is that you are created to do good works after you have been saved, okay? You cannot do good works before you're saved, and then after you're saved, they come out of you like a tree produces fruit. And that's exactly the idiom that is used to describe it in the Bible.
I think the Bible's pretty clear about this, and so many passages. Romans 11:6 makes a distinction where Paul says, basically, if it's by grace, it can't be through faith, if it's by grace, it can't be through works, because if it was by works, it would no longer be grace. A clear distinction. I give you a gift, then it's like you have Christian living, how you're supposed to live, how you're supposed to love others, treat God, treat others and stuff after that salvation. That's how you're supposed to live your life now, to be in accordance with, this new life that God has given you. But I think that, like, a lot of times Christians, we all have a tendency to want to look down and say these other people aren't saved because we don't like the way they're living. You know what I mean? People could look at my tattoos and say I'm not saved. You know what I mean? And so whatever's important to people, we tend to be really judgmental towards those things because I think that's part of our sin nature, and to be completely fair, it's completely counterintuitive to think that Christians can do bad stuff, like really bad stuff. It's really counterintuitive, but reality and the Bible shows us that that's the case, and so really there's a lot of passages like James 2, faith without works is dead, and the Matthew 7 passage where Jesus says, depart from me, I never knew you. There's all these different kind of scriptures people kind of run to say that a Christian by necessity has to be producing good works, but I don't think that that's necessarily the case, because I think everybody produces good works. And then it's a slippery slope, because Bill and Melinda Gates, for example, they've saved millions of African kids' lives. You know what I mean? So it's like...
I think that's a fundamental misunderstanding of what a good work is. What the Bible teaches is that you can't even begin to do good works until after you've been saved, because the things that Bill and Melinda Gates are doing are not the will of God. They are not doing those things because they've been called by God to do them. What they are doing is trying to absolve their guilty conscience for the sins that they have committed by giving away and doing what they consider to be good, okay? But they aren't necessarily doing good, and they could have a very profound positive impact on the planet, but that doesn't mean they're doing good works. There's a difference between those two things.
Is that not good works? Sure, that's more good works than I might do in this life, you know what I mean? And so you have this kind of subjective element to what constitutes as good works. Like, how many works is enough to prove that you're saved? What kinds of works? Who determines what kinds of works, and those sort of things? So for the Protestant circles, I think we have a lot of that kind of messiness there. Like at least the Catholics are clear about it. You know what I mean? Where they say you have the venial sins and the mortal sins. That's clear. But my view personally, what I think is the most consistent and faithful scripture is that I think Christians, I believe we have free will, which is another thing that like some Calvinists might not agree with, and at least libertarian free will. So I think in that aspect, I think that like Christians can live bad lives because we're saved by grace through faith alone. And so it's like we can be saved and be bad Christians. So you can be a bad disciple because Jesus says, you're going to be a disciple. That's going to cost you something. You're going to have to deny yourself, follow me. You know what I mean? And all these things like pick up your cross, and he's hyperbolic, but he says, hate your mother and father and wife and kids in comparison to him. That's costly. But salvation, he paid the cost for. It's by his grace. And so I really kind of be internalizing that deeper and deeper and thinking, man, it's really a free gift. The more I actually really internalized that and thought about it, that's when everything in my life seemed to change. And I don't know if it's like psychologically, you guys, you and your dad probably know better, but it's like when you know that you have this unconditional love and acceptance, and then you have somebody that's also pushing you, then you can change. You know what I mean? You can change from the inside then, but you can't change if you're trying to meet these quotas on the outside and focus on how good you are and that sort of thing. To me, that never worked for me. And I don't think it's like consistent with some scripture either. But yeah, I mean, do you kind of know, like, I think in AA or something like that, I think they have some sort of acceptance kind of theory too, which really helps people change, I think.
I don't know how it works. I don't know enough about AA. I know that it's helped a lot of people. Okay. I've had some other people on my podcast, and it's completely transformed their lives too. Going back to what you were saying about works. So I think we're in agreement from like the limited time I've spent reading and studying these things and talking to other people about it. I'm in agreement. It's a weird thing to say that you could be saved regardless of works. Yeah. You know? Yeah. But I think, it is counterintuitive. But I think it also, it's like relaxing. It gives you a level of ease that maybe allows you to be good, right? Yes. Because you're not doing it, you know, it's not good. And resentful people experience this. It's not good to do things for somebody else because you think you have to. That's not good. Even if you end up doing like good things, if you're doing them to stop someone from being angry, or because you feel guilty, or because you think you have to, you're just going to end up resentful. It's not going to be good for anyone. You're going to end up overdoing it for people. You're not going to have the proper boundaries. I used to be like that, and I used to feel... I think because I was sick too, I felt guilty all the time. So I was always trying to help more than I should help. And I think, you know, being saved without it being tied to works allows you to kind of relax and then have the proper boundaries to allow you to do what you should be doing rather than doing it out of guilt. So there might be, 100%, I don't know, well, there's probably something to that. So I agree anyway.
Yeah.
And I think something that her father, Jordan Peterson, would say is that you have to have the proper aim. And so what the Bible teaches is that we are freed of our guilt from sin, and that frees us up to have the proper aim, to aim our life towards God. And what happens with a lot of people, and especially what happens with people who are in other religions outside of the true faith in Christianity and in Christ, what happens in Islam is you are pointed at the good work. The good work becomes your idol. It becomes that thing that you are seeking. You are no longer seeking after God and God's will. You are seeking after this idol of work and of good works that you feel that you need to do in order to obtain God. And then the other problem that works have, and that trying to do good works has in order to save you, is that you then develop a belief that you deserve to be saved. And what Christianity teaches is that we deserve nothing. What we deserve is to be cast out into utter darkness, into the abuso. Okay? We deserve to be cast out into the lake of fire. That's what we deserve. It is mercy and grace that God has come down and saved us from our sin and given us access to be with him for eternity. And that's the most important thing about Christianity, is it's not about works, it's not about good. It is about doing, it's about good, but it's not about you having to do good. You want to do good because of what God's done for you. And ultimately that's what Christianity teaches. That is the difference between Christianity and everything else. That's the difference between Christianity and Catholicism, or Romanism as I would call it. That's the difference between Christianity and Protestantism. It is all of these other things have things built up around it, whereas Christianity is just about this relationship between you and God, and that then, because you're absolved of your guilt from your sin, you can go off and you can actually look at God and point towards him and aim towards what he wants for your life and to do his will.
Yeah, and what's interesting is there's a passage in Galatians 5:16 where Paul says, "Keep in step with the Spirit, and then you won't gratify the desires of the flesh." And what's so interesting about that is because he's talking about all these things of the flesh, and he's not saying don't do these things and then you're going to be okay, like resist them, you know what I mean, in that sort of way in this passage. But he's saying basically it's like when you keep your mind kind of focused on like the gospel, you know what I mean, like keep your mind and keep in step with the Spirit, then you're not going to gratify the desires of the flesh. And that's what I kind of noticed too, because that shame and guilt and all that stuff, once that stuff kind of just went away, that's when I actually had the the willpower, the ability to be able to stop doing these things that were like controlling me for so long, and so it's super counterintuitive, just like the Trinity is counterintuitive. I think a lot of the fundamental Christian stuff is counterintuitive, which is why people naturally push back. That's why the gospel message is offensive, which Paul talks about in Galatians 5 and 6, because it's super offensive, because that's offensive to think that like somebody who lives an awful life like Jeffrey Dahmer could be in heaven because he believed in Christianity, which I've done a video on. But I think God's grace is big enough to save any of us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty weird, but I don't know, life is pretty weird. And I mean, we're told that we can't even, I believe can't even understand what God is like, right? Can't see it. People are blinded, can't understand it. Yeah. So then who are we to understand the reasoning here?
Yeah. And that was one of the things that helped me believe Christianity was true, because I thought about it. I said, if you're going to make up a religion, why would you make up the Trinity out of all things, right? You know what I mean? Like, you're going to talk about the most counterintuitive thing that you can say to people. You're like, why the Trinity, But I think the gospel message is similar, because every other religion on the planet believes in a salvation based on works. Every single other religion on the planet. And so
I didn't know
that's
that.
what bugs me when Christians do. Oh yeah, they all believe you have to do something and you have to keep doing these things in order to be saved. And Christianity says, no, it's a free gift. Jesus did everything so that way you could be saved. And so that's a radically different claim, which is super offensive, And so I understand the offense, but it's, I think it's the only thing in some ways that really makes sense. It's the only thing that makes sense in my mind, because if we have to do all these things, then it's like, man, who can say? Like, when Jesus gets to the heart, like in Matthew 5, where there's a Sermon on the Mount, he's like, if you looked at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart, right? And you're like, dang, well, if you even looked at a woman, you're violating the laws. So like all of these rules people try to come up with to say, I know I'm saved because I don't do these things. And I'm like, well, in your heart, you probably do, and you're condemning yourself, And so, that's why I think it's just such a beautiful and humbling and counterintuitive message. Like, it's so bizarre all at the same time,
I love it. Okay, John, if people aren't familiar with you, where can they go to find you online?
Yeah, just go to What Do You Meme? It's spelled weird, Whaddo, and then Youmeme. What Do You Meme on all the social media platforms, and you'll find me.
Okay, thank you very much for coming on. That was fun.
That was fun.
It's so interesting. It's so strange. It's so interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime. Yeah, definitely. Same.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks for having me. All right. Bye-bye.
You're going along and you want to build and you say, oh, I'm just near life. If you
Sorry about that. I needed to get the Bible reading up. Unfortunately, I wasn't prepared for that. So here we go. I've got that all set up now. And we are going to be reading out of Numbers chapter 4. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Take a census of the sons of Kohath from among the children of Levi, by their families, by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, all who enter the service to do the work in the tabernacle of meeting. This is the service of the sons of Kohath in the tabernacle of meeting, relating to the most holy things. When the camp prepares to journey, Aaron and his sons shall come, and they shall take down the covering, veil, and cover the ark of testimony with it. Then they shall put on it a covering of badger skins, and spread over that a cloth entirely of blue, and they shall insert its poles. On the table of showbread they shall spread a blue cloth, and put on it the dishes, the pans, the bowls, and the pitchers for pouring, and the showbread shall be on it. They shall spread over them a scarlet cloth, and cover the same with a covering of badger skins, and they shall insert its poles. And they shall take a blue cloth, and cover the lampstand of the light with its lamps, its wick trimmers, its trays, and all its oil vessels with which they service it. Then they shall put it with all its utensils in a covering of badger skins, and put it on a carrying beam. Over the golden altar they shall spread a blue cloth, and cover it with a covering of badger skins, and they shall insert its poles. Then they shall take all the utensils of service with which they minister in the sanctuary, put them in a blue cloth, cover them with a covering of badger skins, and put them on a carrying beam. Also they shall take away the ashes from the altar, and spread a purple cloth over it. They shall put on it all its implements with which they minister there, the fire pans, the forks, the shovels, the basins, and all the utensils of the altar. And they shall spread on it a covering of badger skins, and insert its poles. And when Aaron and his sons have finished covering the sanctuary and all the furnishings of the sanctuary, when the camp is set to go, then the sons of Kohath shall come to carry them. But they shall not touch any holy thing, lest they die. These are the things in the tabernacle of meeting with which the sons of Kohath are to carry. The appointed duty of Eleazar the son of Aaron the priest is the oil for the light, the sweet incense, the daily grain offering, the anointing oil, the oversight of all the tabernacle, of all that is in it, with the sanctuary and its furnishings. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Do not cut off the tribe of the families of the Kohathites from among the Levites, but do this in regard to them, that they may live and not die when they approach the most holy things. Aaron and his sons shall go in and appoint each of them to his service and his task. But they shall not go in to watch while the holy things are being covered, lest they die. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Also take a census of the sons of Gershon by their father's house, by their families, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old. You shall number them, all who enter to perform the service, to do the work in the tabernacle of meeting. This is the service of the families of the Gershonites, in serving and carrying. They shall carry the curtains of the tabernacle, and the tabernacle of meeting with its covering, the covering of badger skins that is on it, the screen for the door of the tabernacle of meeting, the screen for the door of the gate of the court, the hangings of the court which are around the tabernacle and altar, and their cords, all the furnishings for their service, and all that is made for these things, so shall they serve. Aaron and his sons shall assign all the service of the sons of the Gershonites, all their tasks and all their service, and you shall appoint to them all their tasks as their duty. This is the service of the families of the sons of Gershon in the tabernacle of meeting, and their duties shall be under the authority of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the priest. As for the sons of Merari, you shall number them by their families and by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old. You shall number them, everyone who enters the service to do the work of the tabernacle of meeting. And this is what they must carry as all their service for the tabernacle of meeting: the boards of the tabernacle, its bars, its pillars, its sockets, and the pillars around the court with their sockets, pegs, and cords, with all their furnishings and all their service, and you shall assign to each man by name the items he must carry. This is the service of the families of the sons of Merari, as all their service for the tabernacle of meeting under the authority of Ithamar the son of Aaron the priest. And Moses, Aaron, and the leaders of the congregation numbered the sons of the Kohathites by their families and by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, everyone who entered the service for work in the tabernacle of meeting, and those who were numbered by their families were 2,750. These were the ones who were numbered of the families of the Kohathites, all who might serve in the tabernacle of meeting, whom Moses and Aaron numbered according to the commandment of the Lord by the hand of Moses. And those who were numbered of the sons of Gershon by their families and by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, everyone who entered the service for work in the tabernacle of meeting, those who were numbered by their families by their father's house, were 2,630. These are the ones who were numbered by the families of the sons of Gershon, of all who might serve in the tabernacle of meeting, whom Moses and Aaron numbered according to the commandment of the Lord. Those are the families of the sons of Merari who were numbered by their families by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, everyone who entered the service for work in the tabernacle of meeting. Those who were numbered by their families were 3,200. These are the ones who were numbered of the families of the sons of Merari, whom Moses and Aaron numbered according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. All who were numbered of the Levites, whom Moses, Aaron, and the leaders of Israel numbered, by their families and by their fathers' houses, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old. Everyone who came to do the work of service and the work of bearing burdens in the tabernacle of meeting. Those who were numbered were 8,580. According to the commandment of the Lord, they were numbered by the hand of Moses, each according to his service and according to his task. Thus were they numbered by him, as the Lord commanded Moses. All right, we are going to do our last chapter of Bible reading out of the book of Acts for tonight. That's going to be Acts chapter 17. Now, when they had passed Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue of the Jews. Then Paul, as his custom was, went into them, and for 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and demonstrating that the Christ had to suffer and rise again from the dead, and saying, This Jesus whom I preach to you is the Christ. And some of them were persuaded, and a great multitude of the devout Greeks, and not a few of the leading women, joined Paul and Silas. But the Jews who were not persuaded, becoming envious, took some of the evil men from the marketplace, and gathering a mob, set all the city in an uproar, and attacked the house of Jason, and sought to bring them out to the people. But when they did not find them, they dragged Jason and some brethren to the rulers of the city, crying out, These who have turned the world upside down have come here too. Jason has harbored them, and these are all acting contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying there is another king, Jesus. And they troubled the crowd and the rulers of the city when they heard these things. So when they had taken security from Jason and the rest, they let them go. Then the brethren immediately sent Paul and Silas away by night to Berea. When they arrived, they went into the synagogue of the Jews. These were more fair-minded than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness, and searched the Scriptures daily to find out whether these things were so. Therefore many of them believed, and also not a few of the Greeks, prominent women as well as men. But when the Jews from Thessalonica learned that the word of God was preached by Paul at Berea, they came there also and stirred up the crowds. Then immediately the brethren sent Paul away to go to the sea, but both Silas and Timothy remained there. So those who conducted Paul brought him to Athens, and receiving a command for Silas and Timothy to come to him with all speed, they departed. Now while Paul waited for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him, when he saw that the city was given over to idols. Therefore he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and with the Gentile worshippers, and in the marketplace daily with those who happened to be there. Then certain Epicurean and Stoic philosophers encountered him, and said, What does this babbler want to say? Others said, He seems to be a proclaimer of foreign gods, because he preached to them Jesus and the resurrection. And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, May we know what this new doctrine is of which you speak? For you are bringing some strange things to our ears. Therefore we want to know what these signs mean. For all the Athenians and the foreigners who were there spent their time in nothing else, but either to tell or to hear some new thing. Then Paul stood in the midst of the Areopagus and said, Men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are very religious. For as I was passing through and considering the objects of your worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, To the Unknown God. Therefore, the one whom you worship without knowing, him I proclaim to you. God, who made the world and everything in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands, nor is he worshipped with man's hands, as though he needed anything, since he gives to all life, breath, and all things. Since he gives to all life, breath, and all things. And he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings, so that they should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as also some of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. Therefore, since we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the divine nature is like gold or silver or stone, or something shaped by art and man's devising. Truly, these times of ignorance God overlooked, but now commands all men everywhere to repent, because he has appointed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by the man whom he has ordained. He has given assurance of this to all by raising him from the dead. And when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, while others said, We will hear you again on this matter. So Paul departed from among them. However, some men joined him and believed, among them Dionysius the Areopagite, a woman named Damaris, and others with them. All right, thank you for joining me today. It's been a wonderful morning, and I hope that you have a great day the rest of your day. Goodbye.